I'm Sam Brentano, Marion County Commissioner, and I'm here to have another one of our Marion County Today programs. And today's subject is going to deal with volunteer opportunities in Marion County, and we have a lot of them, and a lot of people do great work for us. We'll talk about it a little bit. I have two people here, but I think I'd just like to, I know you, but everybody needs to know you both. And if you would, first Patrick Vance, would you just, what have you done in your life?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, we have known each other for a long time. I live in Maclay in south end of Salem, and my background has been in health and public health. As a kid in college, I worked as an orderly in our little hospital, our little town hospital in Wisconsin, and that sort of kicked off a career in hospitals, most recently at Silverton on the other
That's
side. That's
probably where we meet, as a matter of fact.
That's where you first met. Yes, when you were at, yes, and then I retired from there not too long ago and went to work for Department of Corrections in health service and just retired from there. But it's always been my interests have been in health organizations, community health, the status of community health, the people involved. I get a big kick out of working with those folks. So it's been my career as well as my volunteer.
And a lot of community activities. I'm thinking Rotary and different
Oh,
things
yeah.
that you
Oh, yeah, I was active in
You're
Rotary.
a joiner, aren't you, Patrick? Just say it, a joiner.
I'm a volunteer, Sam.
All right.
I'm a wholehearted volunteer.
Well, and I'll second the motion. Yeah. And our other guest, I guess, is Lisa Miller, but she's newly hired for Marion County as our volunteer coordinator. But if you would, Lisa, just go back and same kind of thing. Where are you from? How you got here? A little bit of that before we get into the subject at hand.
Sure. Well, my path was a little curvy. My actual background, I have a degree in criminal justice. Started out in the prevention field and have been working in substance abuse prevention for about 8 years before I came over to volunteer services.
And what attracted you then to volunteer services? Doesn't sound like a direct step. But
well, you don't think it would be, but most of my work was community crime prevention was actually my focus. So a lot of the work was bringing volunteers together to work on substance abuse prevention topics. And I've been a lifelong volunteer. I guess you could say I'm a joiner as well.
You are.
I
wondered if I had to announce it for you,
yes,
but you are.
If someone needed assistance, I'm usually one of the first to ask because I usually say yes. I get great joy out of volunteering, and I have a wide variety of history in volunteering. So,
you know, I don't want to take a lot of time from this interview, but it's important. That's an important subject to me, and I go to chambers when they have their awards night, just because those people do so much for the community, and they don't ask for pay, give their time, service. They need to be thanked. That's what I'm thinking. But let's get on to, most of this interview will be about Marion County, and then I'll end up, Patrick, and talk about, because you've been doing so many things in particular, I'll talk about that. So Lisa, let's see, I just start down the list. Overview of the volunteer program, it says. Is that enough to get something started?
Yes, we can get started with that. Actually, we have volunteers interwoven throughout the county in almost all of our departments. I think sometimes people are surprised at the number of volunteers that we actually have in the county. We actually have as many or more volunteers actively serving as we do
Do you know
employees.
that number off the top of your head? We hear it once a year, and it always amazes me.
Yes, this last year in 2015, we had over 3,200 volunteers who actively served. They put in over 120,000 hours. So if you value that in dollars, it's worth nearly $3 million to the county. So
and kind of what I was getting at, even more than that, because people volunteer for things they're interested in and are important to them. So they typically bring a certain expertise and, I guess, just that interest that you can't pay for.
Yes.
So let's talk about what you said there. How many? Give me the number again. It's too big. 33.
Over 3,200.
3,200 people. Give us some examples of these volunteer opportunities.
Oh, gosh.
I just said it's anything you could want it to be.
We have volunteers serving in our sheriff's office in just about every area in the sheriff's office that you can possibly think of. Our search and rescue teams, our cadets are all volunteers. They put in a lot of hours. We have volunteers over at the health department. We have a lot of interns that come in from the different colleges, and they're volunteering their time and getting some work experience. So they account for a lot of our volunteer work. And then we have volunteers who are serving just in front office, helping support our staff, even taking phone calls when we're busy and helping with special projects, just because they have a passion for that and they have the time and want to stay involved in the community.
three that I work with, and it's just a short list. With Planning Commission, they do tremendous work for the county. The Parks Commission, and I just had one other, SWAMAC, making decisions on our solid waste, and we deal with those a lot. So those are, in fact, SWAMAC needs some membership right now, so maybe we can accomplish that through these interviews. Then we have volunteer advisory boards, it says. So what do the advisory boards? I just mentioned SWAMAC. Maybe you could talk, Lisa, a little more about what you're looking for, what they do.
We have quite a few advisory boards in a lot of the different departments, and these are sometimes the more difficult positions to fill. Our advisory boards are really specific to the mission of that area. So, for instance, we have our SWAMAC, which is our solid waste,
if I didn't say it.
Solid waste management, Solid Waste Management Advisory Council. And they are currently recruiting for members. But these advisory committees, it's really giving a voice to our community members. It gives them an opportunity to bring their experience and their interest in a specific area and help guide the decisions that the county is making, and give some feedback on the programs that we have in place and the services we're providing.
So how do you let people come to you, and you go to a meeting, say, if you're really interested, we have this spot? Do you go out and actively?
Absolutely.
Or do they usually just come to you? Do you go get
a
them?
little of both. A little of both. Sometimes I have volunteers that just call me on the phone and just say, I'm very interested. Right. Sometimes they will see the advertisements that we've put out on our social media pages or our web page. We'll send out releases, spread them out as much as we possibly can to try and get the information to specific populations that we're looking for. So sometimes they've seen something about it or heard something about it, so they're calling to inquire about it, or sometimes they're just trying to find somewhere that they can serve, and so it's my role to try and help them find the right place.
I want to talk to Patrick a little bit because he's pretty, I like to kid him, but we're good friends. But he does so many things and for so long and so valuable for the county, and I'd like him to tell some of his story. But I want to end it with you, Lisa, if you'd be thinking about, and it'd be a good way to end this section, how a little more about the things, maybe what we're looking for specifically, the type of people we'd like to find, and how to get in contact, all the different ways, from phone to computer. So, I got to go quicker. It says, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
I spent the most time on budget committees the last several years. You've been chair. Just would you talk about your experiences a little bit?
Early on, when we first came back to the county, I was on the Sheriff's Advisory Board for about 3 years. My background, as we said earlier, my background started out in public safety as a volunteer firefighter back in Minnesota. And there weren't openings in the fire department here, and I was a little old to roll hoses. So I went over to the sheriff's office and volunteered there, and then got in touch with the health department. And I've been a member of the Health Advisory Board for 15 or 18 years now.
Children and families too, am I making that up?
No, not that one. That's one I've not been on. And then, of course, the Budget Committee. And I've been there for at least 8 or 10 years. Two different commitments. The Health Board meets monthly to advise, Health Advisory Board, to advise the council, you and the council members, or the commission members, I'm sorry, about health-related issues. And the Budget Committee meets in budget season. We meet every quarter, but we meet in budget season. And I think the role of the volunteer members, the 3 members that volunteer on that board, is to keep a balance, to provide citizen input for the budget process. Mr. Latimer and the commission, you have that pretty well put together, but we oversee the fact that it's done with public input, that it's done with the responsiveness to people who might have concern, that it's done in total transparency. So
should have had you go first because I'm going to run out of time.
No,
but I just
fine.
want you to say you do a good job, and I think you have fun at it too.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that.
Now,
it is
Lisa,
fun.
if you got just enough time to think how to get a hold of you in the county and
visit our
volunteer.
website and our social media page, Marion County Volunteer
phone
Services.
number you could say.
503-588-7990.
Another time, real quick, slow.
503-588-7990.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks for all you do for Marion County. And
Thanks, Sam.
Special Patrick. It was fun
No,
to
it's
be.
an honor. It's an honor to be part of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this segment, we're going to talk about the Victim Assistance Program that's in the District Attorney's Office and the volunteers that serve there. So our guests are Kathy Beach and Joan Stembridge. Kathy, you are the volunteer coordinator, is that right, for the District Attorney's Office? Tell us a bit about your background. How did you get there? What drew you to being a volunteer coordinator?
Oh gosh, well, I was a volunteer first. Back in 1998, I started as a volunteer. I just saw this little article in the newspaper, and there was a need for advocates and people to help victims in our community. And I was in a position where I could volunteer, where I had time. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I like to help people, but I also had a real interest in the criminal justice system. So I just called, and it was an interview process and a background check, and then I went through training very similar to still what we offer today. And I was a volunteer until 2002. So then I was hired in 2002 as the volunteer coordinator. So I've been there a long time.
Excellent. We're going to get back to you and talk a little bit more about the program. And Joan, you are a volunteer today, is that right? And they called you a victim advocate.
Yes.
So you advocate for victims. So how long have you been doing that, and what enticed you to become a volunteer?
Well, I'm a fairly recent volunteer, a year and a half, and I'm a sexual assault volunteer, as well as a volunteer that fills in other ways. And what interested me was similar to Kathy. I worked for 40 years as a nurse and counselor, and when I retired, was looking for interesting ways of continuing to participate in the community, and decided that I would look for a program. And so for 7 years I did a different volunteer program, and then a year and a half ago came here. And what I like about it is that it is of service. It's direct service to people.
Absolutely. So let's just talk a bit about the program so people can understand exactly what goes on there. So tell us about the Victim Assistance Program. People can volunteer for victims of almost any crime, right? So talk about, maybe there isn't any average experience there, but talk about what it's like in your program.
Our volunteers have several different opportunities that they can do. We have what's called a sexual assault response program, and that was what Joan was talking about that she does as well. And then we have a day case or a court case advocate program. So our sexual assault response is after training, a person can sign up for a shift. They're only required to do one 24-hour shift a month, and they sign up for what works for them, and they come into the office and get some supplies. And we actually have pagers still, believe it or not, where if a sexual assault occurs in Marion County, then their little pager goes off, and we get called by either law enforcement or the hospital usually, and our volunteer will respond usually to the hospital and assist a victim through a sexual assault exam. So through a forensic exam, the victim could be reporting or not reporting. It really doesn't matter to us. We're just there to support them in whatever decision they make. So volunteers can sign up for one shift a month or 5 shifts a month or whatever works for them. That works for people that work full-time. We offer that training at night actually, and on a Saturday, so people can take the training and then sign up for times that work for them even when they work during the day. The court case advocacy, people need a little bit more flexibility with their time because they're actually the assigned advocate on a case where they're assisting victims through the criminal justice process. So we accompany people to court, and so they have to have that flexibility if they need to go to court so they can go with the victim. So they're there just in case there's questions. The criminal justice system is daunting, and it can be frustrating, and people don't understand it. It's not like Law and Order on TV, and so we have to our advocate's there to explain when we leave the hearing to go, okay, let me tell you what just happened there. So the victim always knows that there's somebody to call that can get their questions asked, that can make sure that their rights are adhered to, and volunteers can choose how busy they want to be. The biggest commitment is the training. We offer the training twice a year, actually in September and in March, and it's a big commitment of training, but after they get done with that piece, then they can kind of drive the bus and decide how busy they want to be.
So about how many volunteers do you have now?
At any given time, we have between 50 and 60.
Okay.
Probably within that 25 to 30 really active. Some people kind of take breaks. I've had volunteers for up to 15 years before. I've had them for 1 or 2 years and leave, and then they come back. Actually, Lisa, that was just sitting here, has been a volunteer for me for on and off for years, doing volunteer work for us. So we ask for a year commitment because we do give a lot of time in training them, but people don't certainly look at their calendar and go, oh, it's a year, I'm done. They just never do that. They just kind of stay. It's kind of part of our family. So
great. And so, Joan, you went through the training. So what stands out for you in terms of what you experienced there? How did it prepare you for what you've been experiencing in the last year and a half as a volunteer?
That is probably the most exciting part for me, is how well run this program is and how available the staff is at all times to assist with questions. Specifically in the training, I was telling Kathy on the way over here that one thing stood out in my mind was when Walt Begla, the district attorney, came as part of the training, and he just said clearly, the purpose of what we do is very simple. It's justice. And I thought, that's for me. That's for me. I can do this.
And you said you have a background of being a nurse, right? So that probably is helpful for you in the role that you have now as a volunteer for sexual assault? And then the other part of my question is, people that don't have that skills training, is it something that through this training that you have that they can succeed in it?
I think in one way it's helpful to have some comfort with being in an emergency room. And you can, develop that as an advocate without any background in being a specific healthcare provider. But there are many other ways to participate in the victim advocate department that are not nursing, medical related. And so one of the interesting things for me was that it was different from what I had done. And I'm learning about the criminal justice system and helping to provide justice. And to me, that's very valuable for people that are very vulnerable.
So what specialized skills do people need to be a volunteer for your
Really,
program?
a passion to help people. They need to be 18. They have to be able to drive, because they go to court and have to go maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to a sexual assault call. We do a criminal background check, and just somebody that wants to help somebody. We train you. Our training, like I said, it's pretty extensive. It's actually 48 hours long over a 2-week period, and it's amazing the number of people that commit to that. And even some people at the end of training, because then they really can decide and know exactly what they're expected to do. So after training, we have a debrief interview, and I've actually had some people go, it's too much. It's not something that I think I want to do. And that doesn't happen very often, but they always say the training is never a waste of time. It's something you can use in every aspect of your life. And so I don't just open the doors for people just to take it, because the reason we do it is to get volunteers to help victims. But there's really no criteria other than that. You have to be able to have a compassion. You have to be a good listener. We do a lot of listening. And so we have a short interview, and it is an acceptance process, but it's not very often that I don't accept somebody who really, is sincere about helping.
So could you talk maybe about a case that you're recalling? You don't have to use names or anything that would identify the person, but so our listeners can get, or viewers, I guess, can get an idea about what you might experience when you're a volunteer?
Sure. I'll just talk about 2 of the times I was called to the hospital.
Sure.
One time was a young person and her mother, and it was the young person who was there as a victim. And the second time it was an older person. And in each case, my role was to be a good listener and to help that victim feel less intimidated and less uncomfortable with the process of going through a forensics exam, and to make a connection with that person so that she felt I was helpful. And in particular, the mom was the one in the first case that was most upset and angry and frustrated, and I spent most of my time with the mom. And by the time many hours later, by the time this process was over, the mom was clearly relaxed and knew what the next steps were, and the fact that this was now a process that had begun and that they knew what the next steps were. And she felt, I think, like it was not a good experience, but she was supported.
That's great. Thank you so much for your service, for what you're doing as a volunteer. Thank you for putting together this marvelous program. I think what we'll do is we'll put your contact information out on the closing credits, so people can know how to volunteer. And thank you again.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Commissioner Kevin Cameron, and our last segment today is about volunteering in our dog shelter. And I have with me today Sonia Pulvers, welcome, and Kathy, I forgot, Kathy.
Thomas.
Kathy Thomas. Kathy, thank you.
You're welcome.
We even go to church together, and I forgot your last name. So, welcome. So, Sonia, why don't you tell us a little bit about the dog shelter and your role at the dog shelter?
I am the shelter program specialist, so I work with all the volunteers at the dog shelter. Part of our program is that we take in all the lost dogs inside Marion County, and when the owners don't show up to pick them up, then they go up for adoption, and when that happens, we rely on the volunteers to socialize them, give them some exercise, maybe learn something new about a dog, and then we have outreach volunteers to tell the world that if they've lost a dog, to come see us, or they want to adopt a dog, to come see us, because we're only 10 years old, and in the grand scheme of shelters, we're still in elementary school.
Good. Well, thank you. Well, Kathy, tell us a little bit about maybe your background and what led you to become a volunteer at the dog shelter.
Okay, I'm a registered nurse. I do nurse consulting, work with elderly clients, and I like to use dogs sometimes with therapy. I take my dog with me to one of the elderly clients. I have a 102-year-old client that she visits with me and spends the night. And I got started because one of my friends had lost her mother, and she used that as a way to overcome her grief. And so she asked me if I would like to do that, and I started doing that. I've been there for 2 years and 10 months. I've put in 181 hours of service,
So 181 hours of service. Tell us about if you could tell us about some of your experiences during that time. 181 hours is a lot of hours. Maybe some of your most memorable, rewarding times.
I've gone to the shelter to walk the dogs, and I love to play catch with them and throw them in the ball, and have them bring it back and do some training with them. And I like to try to teach them tricks.
Have you taught any of them to retrieve newspapers?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Balls, yes, but not newspapers.
Okay.
And then I love going on the outreaches and sharing with the people in the community that we have dogs, that they can have a forever dog, and tell them a little bit about what we do and how they can go about adopting.
Great. And Sonia, why don't you share a little bit about other volunteer opportunities? I know we have some activities coming up in the future that people can help out with. You want to talk about those?
Yeah. We're in the process of planning our 10-year anniversary celebration, which is going to be October 8th, tentatively 10 to 3. And we're going to have tours and rescues on site. So we're going to need some volunteers to help with getting the word out about the anniversary event, because we'd like to invite all of our alumni families with their alumni dogs back to the shelter in October. So we need volunteers to help with all of that. I have Fall Fashion Frenzy coming up in October as well, which is at Woodburn Outlets, and they rely on our program to supply a bulk of volunteers, and that's a major fundraiser for us. And administrative shelter work, working with the dogs, outreaches. If you would like to see me, I will put you to work.
Great. Is there any special training either one of you can comment on? There's different levels of volunteerism, but types of special training, or is there any special training?
There is special training. When I came on board, I took orientation on the do's and the don'ts of walking the dogs, and how to harness them, how to attach the leashes together first, and then to put them on the dog, and how to get them, if they're running, to come back to you and get down on their level and bring them into you. It's really pretty interesting. And then we've had another training. We had a cash handling training, and then we had, that was downtown here, the transit station, and then we had another training that I've done with the other people, where you're harnessing with a new harness that we have.
So the cash handling training that you referred to would be for somebody who's working behind the counter in a shelter?
Helping behind the counter. Right. We do amnesty events. So we offer low-cost vaccines with the purchase of a Marion County dog license. It's a great opportunity. I have an amnesty event in Staten coming up September 17th. So I'll be
Commissioner
utilizing.
Brantano might want to take his
Yes!
dog over there and get it licensed.
I know, he's good. So the Amnesty events are a really big event for us, and we serve a lot of the community by helping them get those vaccines, plus get their dog licensed so that they can afford it, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's expensive.
We know that's a challenge, but there's a real advantage to getting dogs
Yep.
licensed. And is there other opportunities that you think of if somebody says, you know, I've got limited hours, but I love dogs? Is there things they can do inside, cleaning, or?
They can, if they've got an extra hour, 2 hours, they can come into the shelter 7 days a week, and they can socialize a dog. They can read to a dog. We have a lot of college students.
Read to dogs?
Yes, they come in and they will read to a dog in its kennel, and it's comforting to the dog, it's good for the dog, and it's also good for us personally as a person.
I like to be read to too as well,
See?
of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why your dog brings a paper into you.
And it's soothing for them, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, anything that challenges that you're having at the dog shelter that volunteers could probably help with? I know we've talked about licensing. Is there opportunity to make phone calls to have people that are in a database to renew their license? Is there those types of things?
Those things are available. There are a world of programs that I would love to put together for the dog shelter if I had enough volunteers to make them a reality. I would love to be able to go into the neighborhoods and leave information about all of our services at the
Great.
dog shelter, because we're more than just adopting dogs out. We do a lot, and that benefits the community, but it takes volunteers
Yeah.
to come in and help us.
So if somebody was watching today, how could they volunteer? What would be the best way to get them connected up? Maybe, Kathy, how did you get connected up? Was there a place you went to? Or?
I got connected with a friend of mine who instructed me to go out to the training, and there was orientation. I called to the Marion County Dog Shelter and got the time set up so that I could go in for the training,
Okay.
and just went out there and arrived. I showed up, and that's the first step, is after you've taken the call, is to go show up
Great.
and be there.
And Sonia, anything else? I mean, is there a place that people that are watching, they could go and sign up or call?
They can call the dog shelter at 503-588-5233, or they can go to our website, which is www.mcdogs.net, and go to the volunteer section, and you'll see the application there and the orientation dates.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for, especially for the volunteer work and your service to Marion County. I think it's been 12 years now you've been working for Marion County in some form at the dog shelter, and so thank you for your service. Thank you for your volunteer work. And we just want to say thank you for watching today, and I hope you've learned in ways that we need volunteers, in ways that you can get connected, and there's many more than what we didn't share today. So you'll see our website at the end of this during the credits, and we encourage you as the leaders in the community that you would sign up and volunteer in Marion County. We thank all our volunteers for all the work they did and they do to keep Marion County a great place to live and work. So thank you for watching today.